Dr. Catherine Bell rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the computer screen again. The numbers still made no sense. She had been staring at the same data for 6 hours, and nothing had changed. The readings from the deep space station showed something that should not exist. "This is crazy," she said to herself. She picked up her cold coffee and took a sip. The bitter taste made her face scrunch up, but she needed the caffeine. The object floating in space near the edge of human territory was a spaceship, but it was unlike any ship that had ever been built. The alien governments were already sending angry messages about it. They said it broke every rule of space travel that had been followed for thousands of years. Catherine's computer beeped. A new message appeared on her screen. It was from Jake Morrison, the chief engineer at the space dock. His message was short and to the point. "Kate, you need to see this. The aliens are really upset. Come to my office now." She saved her work and walked down the long hallway to Jake's office. The space station hummed quietly around her. Through the windows, she could see stars scattered across the black of space. Somewhere out there was the ship that was causing all the trouble. Jake's office was messy. Papers covered his desk and empty coffee cups sat everywhere. He was a good engineer, but he was not neat. When Catherine walked in, he was reading something on his tablet. "Look at this," Jake said, holding up the tablet. "The Zentorian Empire just sent us an official complaint. They are calling our new ship an evil thing that goes against nature." Catherine sat down in the chair across from his desk. "What exactly are they upset about?" Jake pulled up a 3D image of the ship. It appeared in the air above his desk, slowly spinning. Catherine had seen pictures of it before, but seeing it in detail still surprised her. The ship looked wrong. It was not shaped like normal spaceships. Most ships were long and smooth, built to move through space efficiently. This ship looked like someone had taken a normal ship and twisted it into impossible shapes. The hull curved in ways that hurt to look at. Parts of it seemed to exist in more than one place at the same time. The aliens say it breaks 16 different galactic laws, Jake explained. Laws that have kept space travel safe for millions of years. They think we are going to destroy the universe. Catherine studied the spinning image. "But it works, right? The ship actually flies." "That is the crazy part," Jake said. "Not only does it flies better than any ship we have ever built. Captain Lisa Hayes took it on its first test flight last month. She says it is the smoothest ride she has ever had." The ship used something called a chaos drive. Catherine had helped design parts of it, but she still did not understand how it worked. The drive created spinning gravity wells around the ship. It was like turning space itself into a washing machine. Every computer model said the ship should explode the moment they turned it on. "The power readings are impossible," Catherine said, pointing at the data on Jake's screen. "According to physics, that engine should not be able to produce that much energy." "I know," Jake replied. "But the ship flew from Earth to the Kepler system in 3 weeks. That trip should take 6 months with our best normal ships." Catherine felt a chill run down her back. Faster than light travel was not new. Many alien races had been doing it for thousands of years, but their ships followed strict rules. They used careful calculations and safe, proven methods. Human engineers had thrown all of that out the window. "The diplomatic team is having emergency meetings," Jake continued. "Ambassador Chen Wei says the alien governments are talking about classifying us as a dangerous species. They might try to stop us from building more ships like this." Catherine understood their fear. The human ship did not just break the rules of space travel. It broke the rules of reality itself. The chaos drive worked by convincing space and time to behave differently. It should not be possible. "Have you talked to the crew?" Catherine asked. Jake nodded. "Captain Hayes says the ship feels normal inside. The artificial gravity works perfectly. The lights stay on. Even the coffee maker in the kitchen works fine, and that thing breaks if you look at it wrong." That was another mystery. Ships that broke the laws of physics usually had problems. Equipment failed. Crew members got sick. Strange things happened. But the Frontier's Edge, as they had named it, ran like a perfectly normal ship. "The design team says they based it on human problem solving," Jake said. "Instead of following the alien rules, they just tried to make it work. When the computer said something was impossible, they built it anyway. Catherine laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. So we accidentally created a ship that makes the entire galaxy nervous, and we do not even know why it works. Pretty much, Jake said. The good news is that it works really well. The bad news is that every alien government in known space wants us to stop building them. Catherine looked at the spinning ship image again. It really was ugly. The hull had bumps and curves that served no obvious purpose. The engine array looked like someone had attached rocket engines randomly to the back. Solar panels stuck out, at strange angles. It looked like a ship built by someone who had never seen a ship before. But it worked. What happens next? Catherine asked. Jake turned off the hologram and leaned back in his chair. Emergency council meeting tomorrow. Every alien ambassador in the system will be there. They want us to explain how we built something that should not exist. And then we find out if humanity gets to keep using impossible spaceships, or if we have to go back to following the rules. Catherine stood up to leave. She had a lot of work to do before the meeting. She needed to prepare explanations for technology that did not make sense and answer questions about physics that seemed to work differently for humans. As she walked back to her lab, she wondered if maybe that was the point. Maybe humans were just different. Maybe they approached problems in ways that other species had never tried. Maybe sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem was to ignore the fact that it was impossible and build it anyway. Outside the windows, stars twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere among them, human ships were flying through space in ways that made alien scientists have nightmares, and they were working perfectly. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was louder than any meeting in recorded history. Ambassador Daniel Rodriguez stood at the center of the Great Hall, while alien representatives from 17 different species made angry sounds in languages that came from all across the galaxy. Daniel tried to stay calm as the noise grew louder around him. Clicks, chirps, buzzes, and sounds that humans had no words for filled the air. Some aliens glowed with angry colors. Others moved their tentacles in what he hoped were not threatening gestures. The humans have created something that should not exist, declared High Chancellor Vextai. His body was made of living crystal that normally glowed soft blue. Right now it pulsed angry red light that hurt to look at. Their ship breaks the law of dimensional stability. One mistake could tear a hole in space itself. Dr. Michelle Parker stood next to Daniel at the speaking platform. She was Earth's chief expert on alien technology, and she was the only human who really understood how their impossible ship compared to normal alien ships. She activated the holographic display system with a touch of her hand. The image that appeared above the center of the hall made several alien representatives make sounds of distress. The Frontier's Edge rotated slowly in the air, showing off its twisted hull and impossible design. It looked like someone had taken a normal spaceship and put it through a machine that scrambled its parts randomly. Solar panels stuck out at angles that made no sense. The hull curved in ways that seemed to fold in on itself. The engine section looked like a three-dimensional puzzle that someone had given up trying to solve. Even humans who worked on the ship admitted it was ugly. Every computer simulation we ran said this design would explode, Michelle said with a cheerful smile. Our best quantum computers had what we can only describe as nervous breakdowns when we asked them to model how the propulsion system works. But when we built it anyway, something amazing happened. The alien representatives fell silent. This was not what they expected to hear. Most civilizations spent hundreds of years testing new ship designs. They ran millions of simulations. They followed safety protocols that had been developed over thousands of years. The humans had apparently ignored all of that. The ship not only survived its first flight, Michelle continued, but it also accidentally discovered two new types of stars and solved a math problem that scientists have been working on for 3,000 years. A representative from the Logical Synthesis Coalition made a sound like a computer crashing. His species was known for their perfect mathematical minds. The idea that humans had solved ancient math problems by accident made him physically uncomfortable. Captain Rick Thompson joined the meeting through a quantum communication link. His image flickered and jumped because of the strange radiation his ship was producing. Even through the static, Daniel could see that Rick looked completely relaxed. The strangest part is how normal everything feels inside the ship, Rick said. We have been flying for 2 months now, and nothing has broken. The coffee maker on Deck 3 has never spilled a drop, even when we do those dimensional phase transitions that make space bend around us. This is madness, whispered a representative from the Order of Rational Engineers. Chaos given form and sent into the void to mock the natural order. Daniel stepped forward to address the council. He had been Earth's ambassador to the galactic community for 5 years. He had handled first contact situations, trade disputes, and cultural misunderstandings. But he had never dealt with anything like this. We understand your concerns, Daniel said, using his most diplomatic voice. But we prefer to think of it as aggressive problem-solving. More angry sounds filled the hall. The representative from the hegemony of perfect order stood up on his 6 legs and pointed an accusatory appendage at the human delegation. Your species approaches engineering with the same casual attitude you use to prepare food, he said through his translator device. You add random ingredients until something tastes good, with no regard for proper recipes or established methods. Michelle nodded enthusiastically. That is actually a pretty accurate description of how we built the ship. Several aliens made choking sounds. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Representatives from different species took turns explaining why the human ship was dangerous, impossible, or offensive to their understanding of reality. Each one presented mathematical proofs, scientific theories, and historical examples of why chaos drives could not work. Daniel and Michelle listened politely to each presentation. Then Michelle would show more data from the frontier's edge, proving that their impossible ship was working perfectly. The dimensional stress readings are completely stable, Michelle explained for the 4th time. The chaos drive actually makes space around the ship more stable, not less. We think it works by convincing reality to be more flexible. You cannot convince reality of anything, protested the high mathematician of Proxima. Reality follows laws. Laws do not change based on wishful thinking. Maybe not for you, Michelle replied, but humans have always been good at making things work that probably should not work. The debate went on until the station's artificial sun began to set. By then, half the alien representatives looked exhausted. The other half looked like they were having existential crises about the nature of physics. Finally, Elder Kexthul of the Ancient Observers called for a recess. His species had been watching the galaxy develop for millions of years. If anyone understood the bigger picture, it was him. We will reconvene tomorrow, the Elder announced. Tonight, we must consider what the human achievements mean for galactic civilization, and whether the laws of physics are as unchangeable as we believed. As the aliens filed out of the meeting hall, Daniel and Michelle were left alone with their holographic ship. It continued to rotate slowly, its impossible design somehow managing to look both chaotic and graceful at the same time. How do you think that went? Daniel asked. Michelle grinned. I think we officially broke their understanding of how the universe works. Is that good or bad? With humans, it is usually both. Outside the Great Hall's windows, alien ships moved through space using propulsion systems that had been perfected over millennia. They followed careful flight paths calculated by supercomputers. They maintained safe speeds and proper distances from each other. Somewhere among them, the frontier's edge flew in patterns that made traffic controllers nervous, at speeds that should not be possible, using an engine that worked by ignoring everything anyone knew about physics. And it was working perfectly. Captain Lisa Hayes gripped the arms of her command chair as the frontier's edge prepared for its biggest test yet. The ship floated in empty space near the edge of the solar system, far enough from Earth that if something went wrong, the explosion would not hurt anyone. Through the main window, Lisa could see her ship's reflection in the polished hull of a nearby observation station. The frontier's edge looked even stranger from the outside than it did from within. Its twisted metal hull seemed to bend light in directions that made experienced pilots feel sick just looking at it. All stations report ready, announced Lieutenant Commander Ben Foster from his position at the navigation console. His instruments showed readings that would have been considered broken equipment on any normal ship. Numbers that changed randomly, graphs that drew impossible curves, and warning lights that blinked in patterns that spelled out words like probably And maybe, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Amanda Clark monitored the crew's health from her station near the back of the bridge. "Everyone's vital signs are normal," she reported. "Only 3 crew members are having existential dread today, which is down from yesterday's 5. The ship's artificial intelligence spoke up from speakers around the bridge. The crew had nicknamed it Murphy, after an old Earth saying about things going wrong. Murphy had developed a personality that mixed hopeful optimism with constant worry about impending doom. Statistical probability of catastrophic failure holding steady at 47.3%, Murphy announced in its cheerful, electronic voice. However, statistical probability of spectacular success has increased to 52.7%. I have stopped trying to make these numbers add up to 100%. On the main screen, representatives from 12 alien civilizations watched from what they considered a safe distance of several light years. The Galactic Engineering Council had positioned emergency response fleets throughout this part of space. They were convinced that humanity was about to accidentally create a black hole or summon something terrible from another dimension. Beginning. Dimensional phase sequence, reported engineer Carlos Martinez from deep inside the ship's engine room. The frontier's edge began to vibrate in patterns that followed no known mathematical rules, but somehow managed to keep the ship's structure perfectly intact. Lisa felt the vibration through her chair. It was not unpleasant, just strange. Like sitting on a musical instrument that was playing a song in a language she did not understand. Space around the ship started to behave oddly. Stars in the background appeared to stretch and squeeze like rubber bands being pulled by invisible hands. The ship itself seemed to exist in several different places at once, creating a visual effect that alien observers later described in their reports as aggressively uncomfortable to witness. "Translation drive coming online," Carlos announced. His voice carried a note of excitement, mixed with the kind of nervousness that came from working with technology that should not exist. Chaos levels reaching optimal contradiction parameters. Lisa watched her instruments carefully. The readings made no sense according to normal physics, but they followed patterns that the human engineers had learned to trust. Engine temperature was holding steady at surprisingly cool. Power output was maintaining more than enough. Structural integrity remained at better than it should be. "Murphy, give me a systems check," Lisa ordered. "All systems operating within acceptable parameters of impossible," Murphy replied. "Coffee maker is functioning perfectly, which continues to be our most reliable indicator of ship stability." The alien observers were sending constant messages to the frontier's edge, begging the humans to reconsider the test. The crystalline hegemony had even offered to buy the ship from Earth just to keep it from being used. But Lisa and her crew had been preparing for this moment for months. "Translation in 10 seconds, Ben announced from navigation. "Space-time distortion field is stabilizing at maximum improbability." Lisa took a deep breath. Through the windows, she could see space itself beginning to twist around the ship. Reality was bending like heated metal, creating patterns of light and shadow that hurt to look at directly. 5 seconds, Ben continued. 4, 3, 2, 1. Translation now. The impossible happened. The frontier's edge did not just achieve faster than light travel. It achieved what could only be described as aggressively faster than light travel. The ship did not accelerate or fade away like normal ships did when they jumped to faster than light speeds. Instead, it simply stopped existing in one place and started existing in another place, as if the universe had decided that the ship belonged somewhere else and had moved it there instantly. The journey that should have taken 6 hours was completed in less than a second. One moment they were near Earth, the next moment they were orbiting a distant star system, leaving behind only a brief rainbow-colored afterimage and the lingering smell of cinnamon in normal space. "Well," said Lisa, checking her instruments, and finding that everything was working perfectly. That was surprisingly pleasant. "Murphy, how did we do?" "We have successfully broken 17 galactic laws," Murphy reported with obvious pride. "We created 2 new types of exotic matter, accidentally solved the unified field theory, and somehow made the local spacetime more stable than it was before we arrived. On the positive side, the coffee maker is still working perfectly, and we arrived exactly where we intended to go. Dr. Clark looked up from her medical readings. No one is hurt. In fact, Ensign Rodriguez says he feels better than he did before the jump. His chronic back pain is completely gone. Lisa laughed. So, our impossible ship can cure medical problems now? Apparently so, Murphy replied. I am adding therapeutic faster-than-light travel to my list of phenomena that should not exist but do anyway. Outside the ship's windows, the alien observation fleets were going crazy with activity. Emergency signals filled the communication channels as alien scientists tried to understand what they had just witnessed. The human ship had not just broken the laws of physics, it had convinced physics to work better. Captain, Ben reported from navigation, we're receiving congratulations from the alien fleets, and also 17 formal requests to examine our engine technology. And 3 marriage proposals from alien engineers, added Dr. Clark, reading. Through the incoming messages, Lisa settled back in her command chair. The test had been a complete success. The ship was working even better than anyone had hoped, and humanity had just proven that sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem was to ignore the word impossible and do it anyway. Set course for home, she ordered. Let's go show them that we can do the impossible twice in one day. The Frontier's Edge began its return journey, once again bending space and time around itself like a ship sailing through an ocean of pure possibility. And somewhere in the ship's kitchen, the coffee maker continued to work perfectly, brewing fresh coffee that never spilled a drop. News of the Frontier's Edge successful test flight spread through the galaxy faster than the ship itself had traveled, which was saying something considering the ship had just redefined what fast meant. Emergency meetings were being held on every major world as alien civilizations tried to understand what humanity had accomplished. Dr. Kevin Walsh sat in his laboratory in Geneva, surrounded by quantum communication devices that had not stopped buzzing for 3 days straight. As Earth's lead theoretical physicist, he found himself trying to explain human engineering to alien scientists whose understanding of physics had been completely shattered. No, we did not use dark matter, he explained patiently to a group of Andromedan researchers whose mathematical models had literally caught fire when they tried to process the human data. We used what we are calling aggressively optimistic matter. It is regular matter that we convinced to behave differently through strategic applications of caffeine and human stubbornness. The Andromedans made sounds that their translators could not convert into any known language. Kevin suspected they were having the alien equivalent of mental breakdowns. Meanwhile, Captain Greg Palmer was preparing humanity's second impossible voyage. His ship, the Probabilities Nightmare, was even more offensive to conventional physics than the Frontier's Edge. The engineers had learned lessons from the first ship and applied them in ways that made alien observers physically uncomfortable to look at. The new design includes a backup chaos drive, Greg explained to the assembled alien representatives who had gathered to witness the launch, plus redundant impossibility generators and an emergency contradiction field. We have also added cup holders that maintain perfect beverage temperature, regardless of local space-time conditions. Several alien scientists fainted when they heard about the cup holders. The idea that humans would prioritize beverage comfort while breaking fundamental laws of reality was too much for their logical minds to handle. The Galactic Trade Federation was holding emergency meetings every hour as they realized what human ships meant for interstellar commerce. Traditional cargo ships took months to cross the galaxy. Human ships could potentially deliver goods anywhere in a matter of days or even hours. The Merchant Guild of Proxima had already begun drafting strongly worded complaints about unfair competitive advantages gained through reckless disregard for reality. Their legal department was working around the clock to find some way to regulate human shipping that did not involve admitting that their own ships were hopelessly outdated. Senator Patricia Brooks addressed the United Earth Congress, trying to explain humanity's new position to a planet that was still adjusting to suddenly being a major galactic power. The congressional chamber was packed with representatives who were struggling to understand how their species had gone from newcomers to galaxy changers in less than a year. We are not trying to break the laws of physics, Patricia said, standing. at the speaker's podium while cameras broadcast her words to billions of humans across the solar system. "We are just demonstrating that physics is more like a suggestion than a hard rule." Her speech was translated into 847 alien languages and broadcast across known space. Approximately half of those civilizations immediately filed formal protests with the Galactic Ethics Committee. The other half sent requests asking if humanity would be willing to teach them how to build impossible ships. Elder Kexthol of the ancient observers whose species had been watching galactic civilization develop for millions of years, made a statement that was recorded in the official galactic archives. "The humans," he said in his ancient creaky voice, "approach the universe with the same casual confidence they use to fix broken household appliances. It should not work, yet here we are, watching them succeed where logic says they should fail." The economic implications were staggering. Entire industries that had existed for thousands of years were becoming obsolete overnight. The Galactic Shipping Consortium saw their stock prices crash as investors realized that human cargo ships could deliver goods faster than their competitors could even detect them launching. Dr. Kevin Walsh received a communication from the hegemony of perfect order that made him laugh until he cried. They were formally requesting that humanity stop using their impossible ships because they were causing widespread philosophical distress among species that prided themselves on logical thinking. "We have alien civilizations having existential crises because our ships work too well," Kevin reported to the Earth Science Council. "The Logical Synthesis Coalition has requested therapy counselors because their mathematicians keep having nervous breakdowns when they try to understand our engine designs." Captain Greg Palmer completed the second test flight of an impossible human ship, while 17 alien research vessels watched from what they hoped was a safe distance. The Probabilities Nightmare performed even better than the Frontier's Edge, completing a round trip to the Andromeda Galaxy in what the ship's computer calculated as negative time. "We arrived before we left," Greg reported to Mission Control, his voice carrying across space through quantum communication systems that were having their own problems with impossible physics. "Murphy says this is mathematically impossible but perfectly normal for human engineering." The alien observers were no longer trying to understand how human ships worked. Instead, they were focusing on the more practical question of how to coexist with a species that treated the fundamental laws of reality as optional guidelines. The Zentaurian Empire, which had initially called human ships an abomination against nature, officially changed their position after their own scientists proved that space was actually more stable in areas where human ships operated regularly. They now referred to human engineering as creative problem-solving in all official communications. Trade agreements were being rewritten across the galaxy. Shipping routes that had been established over millennia were being abandoned as companies scrambled to hire human cargo ships. The tourism industry exploded as species that had never been able to afford interstellar travel suddenly found that a trip to another galaxy cost less than a good meal. Back on Earth, Dr. Kevin Walsh stood in his laboratory watching construction begin on humanity's first proper impossible starship facility. The orbital shipyard looked like a geometric fever dream, with construction arms that bent in directions that should not exist, and assembly bays that operated in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "The strangest part," he said to his assistant, Dr. Nancy Cooper, "is that we still do not completely understand why any of this works." Nancy nodded while reading through the latest batch of consultation requests from alien civilizations. "The hegemony wants to know if we can help them fix their faster-than-light efficiency problems. Apparently their ships are too logical to achieve optimal performance." Kevin laughed. "So now they want us to teach them how to be illogical?" "Looks that way. They are offering to trade their entire mathematical archives for lessons in human-style engineering." Outside the laboratory windows, another impossible human ship glided past, its hull shifting through colors that did not have names and its engines producing energy readings that made instruments give up trying to measure them. The ship existed, in casual defiance of 16 galactic laws, countless mathematical principles, and several fundamental constants, and it worked perfectly, just like all the others. 6 months after the first successful test, humanity's impossible fleet had grown to 12 ships, each one more offensively designed than the last. The newest vessel, commanded by Captain Tony Martinez, featured a hull that existed in 4 dimensions, simultaneously, and a navigation system that used controlled chaos theory to plot courses through folded space. The Galactic Council had completely given up trying to regulate human ship design after their 5th emergency session ended with 3 alien ambassadors requiring psychological counseling. Instead, they had established what they called the Human Exception Clause, a special category of galactic law that essentially said, "We do not understand it, but it works, so please do not break the universe." Dr. Catherine Bell stood in her expanded laboratory, now called the Impossible Engineering Division, watching the construction of humanity's first proper starship facility. The orbital shipyard looked like a geometric fever dream. Construction arms bent in directions that should not exist, and assembly bays operated in multiple dimensions at the same time. "The aliens have started sending us consultation requests," reported her assistant, Dr. Nancy Cooper, scrolling through a list of communication requests that grew longer every day. "The hegemony wants to know if we can help them fix their faster than light efficiency problems. Apparently, their ships are too logical to achieve optimal performance." Catherine shook her head in amazement. The irony was not lost on anyone. Humanity's chaotic approach to problem-solving had not only revolutionized galactic transportation, but had also shown other species that sometimes the best way to solve a problem was to ignore everything you thought you knew about it. Captain Lisa Hayes, now promoted to Admiral of the Impossible Fleet, received regular updates from human exploration vessels scattered across the galaxy. Each ship continued to operate in ways that made alien engineers weep with frustration and wonder. "We have 17 civilizations asking for technology-sharing agreements," she reported during the weekly command briefing. "And the Zentorians have officially apologized for calling us reality vandals. They are now using the term creative problem solvers in all official communications." The success of the Impossible Fleet had changed humanity's position in the galaxy, from curious newcomers to influential innovators. Trade routes that once took months now required only days. Scientific expeditions could reach distant galaxies and return home for dinner. The morning commute between Earth and Alpha Centauri had become a legitimate transportation option. The economic changes were staggering. Entire alien industries had been forced to adapt or become extinct. The Galactic's shipping consortium had hired human engineers to redesign their cargo fleet. The results were ships that looked like abstract art projects but could deliver goods across the galaxy faster than traditional ships could leave port. "The funniest part," said Chief Engineer Jake Morrison as he watched the latest Impossible ship glide past his office window, "is that we are still not entirely sure why any of this works." The ship outside his window was the newest addition to the fleet. Its hull shifted through colors that did not have names, and its engines produced energy readings that made measuring instruments give up and display error messages like, "This is fine," and "probably safe." Murphy's voice crackled through the intercom. "System of the space station. The artificial intelligence had been copied to every human facility and had developed different personalities at each location. This particular Murphy had become obsessed with philosophical questions about reality. Analysis suggests that the universe appreciates enthusiasm more than expertise," Murphy announced to anyone who was listening. "Probability matrices indicate that reality enjoys a good surprise." The statement was not as silly as it sounded. Human scientists had begun to develop theories about why their impossible ships worked. The leading hypothesis was that consciousness and expectation played a larger role in physics than anyone had previously understood. Humans expected their chaotic designs to work, and somehow the universe accommodated that expectation. Dr. Kevin Walsh had published a paper called The Physics of Optimism that was causing heated debates in scientific circles across 17 different species. His basic argument was that reality was more flexible than anyone had realized, and that the key to impossible engineering was approaching problems with the right attitude. "If you build something expecting it to fail," Kevin had written, "it probably will. But if you build something expecting it to work and you are stubborn enough about it, reality might decide to go along with your expectations." The paper had been translated into 247 languages and had caused 12 different alien governments to establish new research programs dedicated to studying human psychology. The morning commute from Earth to work had become an interstellar affair for thousands of humans. Office workers living on Earth could commute to jobs in the Andromeda galaxy and still be home in time for dinner. The phrase, "traffic is terrible today," now referred to delays caused by space-time distortions rather than cars on highways. Alien. Tourists had begun visiting Earth just to see the species that had convinced the universe to be more flexible. The tourism industry had exploded as visitors came to witness human engineering in action. Tour guides regularly took groups to watch impossible ships being built in orbital shipyards that defied architectural principles. "The strangest thing," observed one crystalline hegemony tourist in a translated interview, "is how normal they make it all seem. They built ships that should not exist, and then they use them to deliver pizza." Indeed, human pizza delivery had become an interstellar service. Several companies offered guaranteed delivery anywhere in known space within 30 minutes or less. Their delivery ships were small, fast, and painted with cheerful logos that made alien traffic controllers nervous. The Galactic Historical Archive recorded this period as the Great Impossibility, marking the moment when one stubborn species taught the universe that the laws of physics were more like guidelines than absolute rules. Human engineers continued building ships that should not exist. Human pilots continued flying them to places that should not be reachable, and human scientists continued explaining how none of it made sense, but all of it worked. Captain Tony Martinez completed another impossible journey, this time bringing back samples of matter from a parallel dimension where the laws of physics were slightly different. His ship, the Probabilities Nightmare, had accidentally opened a doorway between realities and had politely asked if it could borrow some interesting rocks. The locals were very friendly, Tony reported to Mission Control. "They gave us some crystallized time and a jar of liquid mathematics. Murphy says we can use them to build an even more impossible ship." The future stretched ahead like an endless ocean of possibility. Humanity had proven that the universe was far more accommodating than anyone had believed. Other species were beginning to experiment with their own impossible projects, inspired by human success. And somewhere in the depths of space, coffee makers continued to work perfectly aboard ships that existed in defiance of everything rational, brewing fresh coffee that never spilled a drop, no matter how many laws of physics their vessels chose to ignore. The impossible had become routine, and the universe seemed perfectly happy about it.